Today, Jenny Ostoj joins us to share how she made the decision to leave her full-time job to become a maker. Specifically, Jenny sews, and she'll share a little bit more about what she was sewing in to begin with and what she's sewing now, and that what that whole transition looked like. Hey, Jenny, thank you so much for being here.
Hi, Brandy. Thank you so much for having me.
So, can you share what it looked like well, first of all, what were you doing way back when you first started sewing and selling things, selling your handbags?
Yeah, well, actually, do you want me to start with actually like just a little introduction of what I do currently, and then we can kind of start with the
Yeah.
the backbone of how that journey kind of started. So my name's Jenny Ostai. I am the founder and maker behind Wag Theory, and I make stylish and functional dog gear so you can get outside with your pup rain or shine. So that's kind of what I do now. But there is a whole kind of lead up to how I got there, because that is not what I thought I would be doing even 2 years ago. So now let's go back to kind of where I started. My background, I've had a number of different kind of professional shifts over the years, but I was a project manager in technology, and I was great at that job and I really loved it. I loved working with teams, but it was so stressful. And there became a point when I wasn't finding joy in the teams I was working with. I switched jobs a couple times, and I knew I needed a break. And as I was kind of getting to that point, one of the things I was doing on the side to kind of relieve some of that stress was to work on. I started sewing, and I don't have a design background. I didn't have really much sewing experience, but I did realize that I really loved working with my hands, and I started making bags. So, like bags for myself, and just experimented. I watched a ton of YouTube videos and things like that, to just learn different techniques. And then at this point in my job, when I just kind of had enough, to be honest, I thought, maybe I can just do this for a while. I had saved up some funds, and so I had a little bit of a cushion, but I thought, what, I'm going to try being a maker. And I really had no idea what that meant, or how hard it would be, but turns out it's not a very easy transition. And that is also one of the things I realized, was that, when you work in a team environment or in a corporate environment, you have a lot of ability to kind of hide some of the parts of yourself that maybe aren't as strong. And when you launch out as a maker on your own, ready to like sell your goods, it exposes every single like nook and cranny of insecurity that you might ever have. And so that is actually, when we start talking about anxiety, and that is kind of what I think about, is this journey that I had, really taking something I loved and was doing as a hobby, turning it into a business, and then bringing really finding kind of where my true passion lied. And now I really feel like I'm in a pretty cool spot. So for about a year after I finished my kind of corporate job, I was making bags and like learning what it was like to be a maker, and going to markets, just trying to kind of get out there. And then because I had a little bit more time with just at home, my job was more, or my schedule was more flexible. That's when my husband and I decided to get our dogs. And really, we only meant to get one, but we ended up with two, which meant that I was in like full dog mode, while I was making these bags and going to the markets and starting social media for this other business it was actually called Joe Rose Design. And but when I got the dogs, I realized that the medium I was working on in the bags, which was wax canvas, would make a really great dog jacket. So as my focus was really with the dogs, I made them prototype jackets, and then started to realize that there was a lot of traction and interest when we would wear them outside. And I took them to a couple of markets, and people were really interested in them. And so that's when my shift really kind of went towards saying, hey, I have these dogs in my life that I'm starting to learn so much about. They are starting to teach me so much about myself. And like, what if I pivot my business and actually do dog stuff? And so that's kind of the long version of how I got to Wag Theory, which is my dog-based business, or dogs, jackets and accessories. So I'm still sewing, but I'm wholly focused in the dog space. And then I also make human accessories that you can take outside with your dog. So my whole thought with the dogs is that they provide us so much joy, and I really believe that there's such a strong connection that we have, and so much that we can learn from them. And so when I think about the different types of products that I have in my collection, it's really tries to be from that lens that says like, okay, well, how would what are the types of things that we can do with our dogs? Um, and how can I improve that, the circumstance in which we're doing it. So like, for example, when you're going outside and walking your dog, I make really high quality waterproof leashes, and a wax canvas bag for the human to wear to keep your treats inside and things like that, as well as kind of my flagship product which are the dog jackets. So I live in the Pacific Northwest and we have tons of rain, so that is kind of where the jackets come into play, and they are definitely pretty unique. And I've seen a lot of traction of people being pretty interested in them because there's not a lot of offerings out in the market right now for a waxed canvas dog jacket. So yeah, that's kind of a long-winded answer to where things are and what I do.
So, circling back around to how you made this decision to become a dog mom. Um,
Yeah.
in addition to having this free time, you mentioned that you were also dealing with some anxiety. What did that look like, and kind of how did it surface for you? I mean, yeah, I'll stop there and just let you
Yeah.
answer.
For sure. Yeah. So, I think anxiety is something I've lived with and I have always been trying to, find coping mechanisms my whole life. And so when I started um, doing the maker business, so a small business just on my own, basically solopreneur, um, every like it just really rocked my confidence. And I think, when you put yourself out there and you don't get a lot of response, or you're not understanding how to get the traction you need, it's so hard and you feel alone and kind of isolated in this experience. Other people are going through it, but it's really hard to sit there day in and day out, have the kind of have the just uh the the courage, I guess, to continue day in and day out, regardless of the response that you're getting. Because what I've learned as a maker is that it just takes so much. I never realized, to be honest, how hard it would be, and it takes so much longer than I ever realized to just kind of build momentum in a for a foundation business that you want to be is going to be around for a while. Like, there's lots of tips and tricks for how to do things really quickly, but I'm about building something foundational and kind of for the long haul, and that is a slow growth. And so I think that, your mind gets in the way, and my mind gets in the way constantly. And, I have a lot of, behavior in my mind about just not being good enough, or not being enough, or not um, having the skills or the experience to be able to do this. And so that's kind of where I think the self-talk and the anxiety shows up. And then, I've been really just working on different types of coping because of that. Does that answer your question, or do you want me to go into kind of what I do for to kind of handle that, or
Yeah. So, what had you been doing to handle that before you? I mean, you mentioned that your dogs are helping you with this.
yeah.
What techniques and um, things were you using before you got your boys?
Okay. Yeah. So, I mean, it's changed a lot. I think, our lives go up and down, and different techniques and things like that help at different points in our lives. But I would say huge one for me has been exercise. And it's interesting that has changed. Like, the way that I exercise now, especially with my dogs, has changed. But that has always been a really key way for me to process my thought, like running, and things like that, getting outside, processing my thoughts, and kind of just trying to get a clear mind before maybe starting back up with work and things like that. So I would say exercise is really something that I've always done. I have tried meditation so many times. I honestly am not very good at it, and I don't do it right now. I have found some other techniques that help me more. Um, so I would say the other thing that I did previously was a lot of decluttering. So I have I really feel like clearing out the space in my brain where all of these thoughts live is how I become kind of more centered and balanced and at peace. And so a big part of that is a huge decluttering of physical space for me. And so I did lots of work even before I quit my job around cleaning out my closet. I did some capsule wardrobes where you kind of eliminate some of the choices because we all have decision fatigue. So removing those that excess and really like taking my lifestyle down to a little bit more of a manageable level so that when I came into my home, it just felt more relaxing. And so then that way you just have a little bit more space, I guess, to deal with like the thought patterns that are happening in your head. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm so glad you mentioned decision fatigue. And um yeah, so I'm so right there with you on just trying to keep everything as simple and as streamlined and as minimalist as possible. I would say I'm far from a capsule wardrobe. Um, can you talk about not to get too far down the rabbit hole here, but I could use some tips on this.
You want me to
Yeah,
talk
like
about?
just in terms of how did you go about deciding? Because for me, I'll pull something out that I haven't worn in 3 years
Oh,
and be like, oh, well, but it's kind of cute, and it'll
yeah,
go right back in.
yeah. Well, I think that so I listened to a podcast and kind of read a lot of blogs around. I think her name is Courtney Carver. It's called Be More with Less. And so it really comes down, I mean, ultimately, I think all of this journey comes down to like not like um, feeling okay with exactly where you are and who you are in that moment without all of this stuff. And so, it not only is it just getting rid of the things, because you can easily just get them right back into your closet, but like doing the inner work around really feeling satisfied and enough with exactly where you are and what you have in that moment so that then it doesn't matter so much. So the decisions don't feel like so dire, I guess. So like when I looked in my closet, I um you have to just get a little uncomfortable with it, I think, to start. And one of the things that I did was I had a suitcase and I took out all of the things that I thought would like be so things I could live without. And I put them in that suitcase and I didn't get rid of them. I just put them away. And then if I couldn't remember what was in there, then it was probably a good decision that like it could go the next step and like be given away. And so I kind of did it in a step process like that. So it didn't feel like, oh my gosh, I'm just like tossing it all out. It was like, well, let me take this first step and see how it feels. And then sometimes you might be like, you know what? No, that yellow shirt, I need it back. And you can go get it and put it back in your closet. But that was one way that I worked through that. And I don't do full capsule wardrobes or anything like that, but I keep a suitcase and I only put out things in my closet that are in season for that time period. And I put all of the other clothes away and I rotate them out in the season. So then at least it's like you only have what you need at that moment. And it doesn't feel like you've got all this stuff you have to sort through every moment, every time you want to like find that one thing that's seasonally appropriate for right now.
Okay, thank you for taking the time to explain that a little more. As far as So that was your closet. As far as kind of the space that you're in most of your day, how did that so first of all, you are so organized and so creative when it comes to your organization, just from some of the things that you've shared on Instagram. And I love the idea of being organized. And yet, especially my workspace, it is just, it just devolves into chaos every single day. So do you have any pointers or strategy for keeping that workspace in order?
So I think I use a similar concept with my workspace. And it is kind of funny because I will find myself spending time moving things around. But really what it comes down to, so I have a physical studio space. And I keep everything here that I use. And if there's other things that like I have display pieces that maybe I'm not using right now, but I don't want to get rid of them. So I keep all of that stuff in a separate area. And right now it's at my house in a closet. So that way when I look around, I have just what I need and I can be come in and feel more focused because I just I know I'm not going to have to like look through things in order to find that
Yeah.
one thing that I need for today. So I guess I use a similar concept. I do, though maybe I'm weird in this way, but I really enjoy organizing. And so it's actually a stress reliever for me to do it. And maybe that's just a personality thing. Or, part of my wiring that I find joy in kind of I actually have to go the opposite way, which is stop procrastinating by reorganizing everything. Let's just dive in and get the work done. Because I can find myself coming back to that and like wanting to like retool how everything is set up because I can think of a better way to do it when that's not the most valuable part of the business, right? So, but there's something to be said about feeling good and having what you need, I think, and but not too much.
Yeah. Okay, so you mentioned the organization and the exercise, and you alluded to perhaps some other techniques that you were using to deal with anxiety.
So for now, this is very recent, but and I know you have a podcast on this. So I recently learned tapping techniques,
Okay.
and so EFT, emotional. I can't remember what it stands for. But basically, it's using kind of the pressure points in your face and other areas to lower, kind of just like your nervous system can calm down by using these points as you say certain phrases and things like that that might trigger you. So, for example, wanting to say like, okay, if I'm afraid of something or feeling nervous, I can go through these exercises, and it really does. I mean, I was shocked that it was like such a powerful experience. I found it through a book well, everything is kind of started in one way, but a friend recommended a book to me. I read it. I found a different book. This book is all about tapping, and that is how I got the introduction to it. And it has really, I mean, I would call it life changing. Like the sense of um, nervousness that I feel in my chest has it's lowered like a whole life level down. And I would say in the past 6 months because of this technique that I started using. And so um I find it incredibly powerful and I do it a lot.
Okay.
And that has really helped. Yeah.
Okay. And then your dogs, how have they helped with your anxiety level?
Yeah. So, I mean, I think that what they have done is just to provided a whole level of kind of joy and enrichment to to my life that I didn't know I didn't have. Like our life was really great before the dogs, but I smile and I laugh, and I feel so much more joy now because of them. So I don't have children. My husband and I won't have them, and these are our little babies, and they I just it was such a amazing surprise. Like we when we we're planning to get a dog. I just when I had a dog when I was a kid, it was like a fixture in our life that we didn't think that much about. It was, the dog was there. I just don't remember having such a strong connection. And the minute we got these dogs, I just, you know, you have such a connection because you have to, you're the one that they depend on. So there's like a need, like all of a sudden I'm needed by these dogs. And so, we built this really strong kind of bond through that. And there's the whole there are studies that show that is it the serotonin, like there's like the chemical reaction that happens in our brains when we look at when humans look at, like a mother looks at a baby, you have the same type of reaction with dogs. And so like you have this like overwhelming kind of like love and joy, and the studies also, I believe, show that the dogs can feel it in return. So there is a reciprocal kind of connection happening there. And I have to say, like, they also know when to pull me away. Like, I work a lot, and they will tell me when it's time to take a break. And it's just so funny that I sometimes need that because I won't do it myself. And, but they're right there to tell me that it's time for the walk or it's time for lunch. And they're really not going to let me slide on any of that. And so I think that they provide some structure um, to the days, and that element of exercise, like getting outside with them. I think in the pandemic, that was just something that I I am so thankful for. So many of us just felt stuck and isolated at home, and that ability to get outside, or like that requirement to get outside with the dogs, really, the minute you get outside, you just have just such a different perspective, and the fresh air and just the movement in your body is has just, I think that we were so fortunate to have them through the pandemic to kind of provide that break for us. Yeah.
Yeah. Since you've had them, have you noticed that your confidence has been drastically improved?
I think it's everything together. I
Okay.
would say I have, as we all do, ups and downs. And as I mentioned earlier, there is this tough, like, to when you launch products and you put yourself out there, if you don't get, the response that you're expecting, it's really sad. Like you feel sad and like disappointed in yourself. And I will wholeheartedly admit that there have been times that I have cried. But you know what? Those little guys will come over and lick my tears and make me feel so much better. So maybe they have. I mean, in that regard, like, they um they're never going to judge us. They just like come with love and wear their emotions on their sleeves. And so I think it kind of allows us to do the same. And so I indirectly, I guess, maybe yes, it has increased my confidence.
So do they go with you, well, probably to so you're doing quite a bit of shows and,
Mm,
local
yeah.
events, right? Do they go
Yes.
with you
Yes.
to those?
No. So
Okay.
I will say that um they my dogs Chewy and Solo, they are Australian Labradoodles. They have a lot of energy and they kind of run the show at our house. Like we give them a lot of attention. They and they would just want me to hang out with them, the whole time if I
Yeah.
was at a show. And the reality is that there is a lot of explaining and conversation that I need to do around the products that I have. And so they won't just sit there and like chill out and lay down, under my chair while I do that. Like they just have a whole other level of energy. They can do it a little while, but it's like they can do it for 10 minutes and they're like, "Yes, I've been very good. Where's my treat?" And it's like a lot of that. And we do a lot of socialization, like taking them to restaurants and things like that. But it's not their natural that's not where they feel most comfortable, right? Like they
Yeah.
live in they do that for us. Like, and I really do, I try to think about that, right? Like, the same way that they're my dog models, right? Like, I try to make it a positive experience for them too, because I know that when it comes down to it, they don't really want to be sitting there in front of the camera for a long time. So I try to like prepare as much as I can beforehand. We do the stuff. They're very willing to please. Like, they want to do a good job for me. It's really sweet. But also, like, I reward them with really delicious treats, and I try not to take very long because I do know it's not what they want to be doing. Yeah.
Yeah. So have you noticed? I feel like you're an incredibly empathetic person already, Jenny. Have you noticed that your empathy levels have increased since you've gotten your dogs?
Oh, yeah, I bet they have. I think so.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah. I think just because I am like, what I've realized about our relationship is how easy it is to ignore them. Like, I could easily put my headphones on, shut the door, and they would sit outside my office or whatever, and they would just take it, you know? And so, like, there's this level of like, we have the power as humans to like take the relationship how we want to. And I do feel like there's an element of that that has made me reflect on how easy that is in our lives with other people, or, causes and things like that as well. So, yeah.
Well, okay, I'm not at a loss for questions. I just kind of I'm also trying to think of um which way makes the most sense to continue with this conversation while we're recording here without
Yeah.
without stopping and full on taking advantage of my time with Jenny myself. Um okay, maybe this would be a great opportunity to ask you. Is there anything that you would like to share in this episode that we haven't talked about already, or more on the topic of anxiety or confidence building, or kind of all of the things?
I feel like we've touched a lot on the different aspects of how anxiety is a part of my life as a maker and a small business owner, and how the dogs are part of that. Gosh, and I also we talked about how kind of my collection tries to um, support that connection between the dogs, and so I think that's probably what I would hope, like, if people are interested in dog wear and like what I make, that is kind of how I approach it, is this I really believe that the connection that we have with our dogs is really special, and so I take that really wholeheartedly, like, in the designs and in what I do for my work, because I think that, when we do have the opportunity to shape our own businesses, like, we get to write the script on how that happens. And so that's kind of the lens that I try to kind of start from as I like create this kind of business that I have. So I think that's it.
Okay. Well, thank you so much for being here today and for sharing your story, sharing how, yeah, just sharing your progression from uh, the workforce to becoming to launching out as a solopreneur, um, and how your boys fit into that equation. This has been
Yeah.
fantastic.
Well, thank you so much for having me.